Good morning. Welcome to day one of the Navigating Neurodivergence 3-day challenge. It is great to be here doing this really important work with you. Now I'm going to wait for a few minutes to let people join the group because I know it takes a little bit of time for Facebook to send out the notifications and make sure that everybody knows where they need to be and when. So I will wait a few minutes whilst the group starts to fill up. And it will be lovely for you to say hello in the comments, give me a wave, or any other emoji that may well sum up your day. So as you join and as we wait for others to join, give me a wave, give me a hello in the comments. And it's always really nice to see those comments whizzing by. Oh, hello, Joanne. Hello. Oh, yes, we've got international attendance as well. That's really wonderful to see. So you are joining day one of the Navigating Neurodivergence challenge. It is great to be here with you. So just to help other people get the notification that they need to be here, because it's not always easy to find, it doesn't always pop up straight away. If you give some likes or love hearts or comments, it will help the visibility of this group. So say hello in the comments. Always nice to see people joining us. And we will just wait a few minutes saying hellos whilst we wait for other people to join us. What's really nice as well is if you could let me know where you're joining from. I know that we've got someone from South Africa here already, and we are half expecting someone, Kylie from Australia, not to be confused with Kylie Minogue, but Kylie hopes to join us from Australia, but I think it will be 8:30 p.m. for her over in Australia. Let us know where you're coming from. I'm coming from East Sussex, and the weather is much better today. You'll be pleased to know. So we got as far as South Africa last night. We're hoping for Australia today, but I know that quite a few people will be joining the catch-up videos. So let's just see where we're from. Okay. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my morning because it's very strange here at the moment. I've got a completely empty house, and my husband set off with our 3 children this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning to take them to go and watch the sunrise over Pevensey Bay with some friends of ours. So I have a completely still and quiet house here, which is really strange for our very neurospicy, neurodivergent family. It's not often this quiet, but I'm not going to lie, it's really quite lovely. Okay, we are going to get started in a few moments when I can see that people have all come in. Oh, hello, Sarah. Welcome to you. We're just doing some welcomes, so give us a wave in the comments. Tell us where you're joining us from. We already have international reach on this call this morning, which is really lovely. I've just been saying how strange it is. We've got a very quiet house today. My husband, we were like caged animals yesterday because it was raining here in Sussex all day yesterday. The sun has come out today, so they went to watch the sunrise at Pevensey Bay today. So it's all nice and quiet here for me. Now, just whilst people are joining this live, because I can see that people are still coming in. For anyone who wasn't able to make the welcome party last night, you might have already watched the video catch-up explaining how everything's going to work. But one of the things that I explained is that the name of this challenge is Navigating Neurodivergence, and that is a huge topic. So I have chosen just to focus on one small area of neurodivergence. but it's an area that kind of gets its tentacles into all of the other areas. It's a kind of foundational element of supporting neurodivergence, and it helps give access to all of the other sort of strategies and support that children need, perhaps around executive function or emotional regulation typically. Certainly when I do coaching, a lot of the coaching work that I do with neurodivergent children is around executive function and emotional regulation. But a lot of that can only be built from a strong foundation of confidence and understanding your neurodivergent identity. So that is what we're going to be focusing on over the next 3 days. How to build and support and understand a confident neurodivergent identity. And each day I will explain how that then helps give you access to the strategies around executive function or emotional regulation. Okay, so I think it's 10 now. I'm going to make a start. So we're going to start by just kind of contextualizing why it's important that we focus on this idea of a confident neurodivergent identity. And it's important because it requires a mindset shift. We are still battling very much a kind of deficits-based perception of neurodivergence. And I remember when I first told people, friends and families, about my boys' diagnoses, you know, the most common response was, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And that was kind of grating because there's a presumption there that it's only negative. And if children grow up absorbing that message that there is something wrong with them, that there is something to be sorry for, that there is some sort of shame attached to their neurotype, then confidence is going to disappear. And once confidence has disappeared, everything is going to be harder. It's going to feel like a losing battle because you don't have that foundation. So that's why I'm talking about this sort of foundational understanding and shifting perceptions over the next 3 days, because from there you can build on strategies that work. Now, that's not to say that confidence alone will make all your very real struggles disappear. That's not the case at all. And I know that from lived experience. And those of you who weren't able to make the welcome party yesterday, I did talk a little bit about why neurodivergence is very much part of my world, both professionally in education. So I've been a teacher for 15 years with roles all the way up to senior leadership. With responsibility for inclusion, and my children are neurodivergent. We are very much a neuro spicy family. So I know that confidence alone doesn't eliminate these struggles. We do have to parent our children in a different way. But for many neurodivergent children and teens, I'd say even especially teens, a large part of the struggle around their behaviours, their anxieties, mental health concerns do come from this feeling like they don't fit in, they don't belong, they sense that there is something like fundamentally wrong with them. And this might even be subconscious because they have never known any different to feeling the way that they do. They just feel this sort of sense of unease, like they don't fit for some reason. So today we're working on 2 things to shape identity: labels and language. And I've put a little summary of my notes from today up on the page already so that you can kind of follow along like this is a presentation. But first of all, labels. Now, I hear a lot of parents say that they don't want to put a label on their child. And even more complex than that, I hear a lot of teachers in education saying, I don't see the point in putting a label on them because nothing is going to change in the education system. So there is this resistance to labels. But here is the thing. Hiding from that label is not going to change the reality of your child's neurotype, the way their brain is wired. Naming it is not going to change that reality. And when we avoid labels, it can send the message, it can kind of reinforce this negative perception that it's something to hide from, to be ashamed of, and to be sorry for. But actually, the neurodivergent label should just be neutral information, like being left-handed or like knowing your blood type. And I'm not diminishing the difficulties of having a different neurotype. I'm not saying it's the same, but it should be neutral information that tells you how your system works, how your brain setup works, so that you can support it better. Because if we don't give children that explanation for why they experience things differently, they will create their own explanation for why they are experiencing things differently and feeling things differently. And invariably, that explanation tends to be along the lines of, there must be something wrong with me, which is why we need to get this confidence issue sorted first. So children already know that they feel different. They try to mask it. They try to push through. They try to be the same as everybody else. And we will get into masking in a lot more detail on Thursday. But this is exhausting and it creates shame and confusion. So when I'm talking to parents and fellow professionals in education, I summarise the reasons why it is helpful to label our neurodivergent children with these 3 words. So these 3 words should help you remember why it's not something to be afraid of. First of all, reality. Second of all, shame. Third of all, opportunity. So these 3 words will help you when you are explaining to others why you think it is necessary and helpful to label your child so that they understand who they are and why they are the way they are. So number 1, reality. Nothing is going to change because of explaining your child's neurodivergence to them or by hiding away from it. Nothing is going to change the reality that your child's brain is wired a particular way. It works the way it works, whether we name it or not. So the reality is not going to change. Second of all is this issue of shame and perception, because by hiding from the label, it reinforces this sense of shame, or as if it's something to be embarrassed about or ashamed of, when really it should just be seen as neutral information of how our brain works. Because the third thing, opportunity, is that by understanding this, we give our children the opportunity to understand how their brain works so that they can get the best from it. And I always like to give the example of ADHD here, because when you understand that ADHD is a difference in regulating attention, it's not attention deficit, it's an attention regulation issue. And that actually the reason it's a regulation issue is because dopamine levels, I'm not going to get too technical today, but this is why understanding helps. Dopamine levels in the ADHD brain are tidal. So when the tide is in, you've got lots of attention and hyperfocus, and you can harness that. But then when the tide is out, you are really going to struggle with attention and focus. And that's when you need certain types of strategies to support dopamine regulation. Now, if you understand that that is how your brain works, you can work with it rather than fighting against it and trying to force it to work in a way that it isn't meant to. So you're creating a real opportunity to help your child understand their brain. So labels do not box your child in. In my view, it's the complete opposite. It liberates them. It frees them to get clarity on what actually works for them. So that is stage 1 of our talk today, is around labels. Now, many of you might have already embraced your neurodivergent labels. And once you understand that it's neutral, just neutral information, nothing to be ashamed of, we are working with it, then the next step for you is to think about the language that we use in society, with schools, with friends and family. And what really doesn't help here is that the diagnostic language of words like disorder and deficit are really unhelpful, and the science has actually moved on. Just as I was explaining with the ADHD brain, and we now understand that dopamine levels are tidal and it's a regulation issue. The science has moved on, but unfortunately the language has not. So because language shapes how children see themselves, we have to be really mindful in how we use that language and what we choose to reject, because the science has moved on. So if a child is constantly hearing references to disorder and deficit and being distracted and lazy, sensitive, awkward, then we are just perpetuating this issue of it being negative, and it becomes part of their internal narrative and who they believe they are. And we need to shift that. So one example might be distracted. That a word typically associated with ADHD, for example, but equally it can be autistic children. They're in their own little world, they're distracted. We need to look at what is behind that presentation of distractedness. Because if we look behind what is being presented as distracted, it may well be that they are just having to process an awful lot more information. And I'm going to be talking about the neurodivergent filtering system in the brain tomorrow, because it's far more complex for the neurodivergent brain. So if we recognise that they are just noticing everything, that they are constantly processing, that they are really perceptive, that they are really curious, then those are the sorts of language that sits behind this presentation of appearing distracted all the time. And that's when we can start to look at that distractedness through a different lens and see the positives that are attached to it. It's about going a little deeper than the surface presentation that you see and understanding what's going on behind it, so that we can change that lens slightly and say, I can see that you are just processing everything. You're so curious about everything. You're noticing everything. It changes the perception. And the goal isn't to pretend that there aren't any challenges here, because I know that there are. But we don't want children to only associate their neurotype with difficulty and struggle, because it doesn't have to be that way once they understand it. And I once heard, I have a terrible habit of tangenting, I'm sorry, but a very short, small tangent here, because I just want to mention autism for a moment, because I've mentioned ADHD. I remember hearing once someone saying that autistic people don't struggle with social communication skills. They just have excellent autistic communication skills. And I really like that way of flipping it around and seeing it differently, because they do have excellent autistic skills, just not necessarily typical social communication skills. And this is why we often see neurodivergent children attracted to each other. My children's closest friends are also neurodivergent, and it's almost like they are attracted to each other because they understand each other's communication style. They don't necessarily see eye contact as an issue, or a blunt way of expressing themselves as an issue. They see it as quite an effective way of communicating. So I really like this idea of autistic people saying, we actually have excellent autistic communication skills. We just don't have typical communication skills. So this is all the same idea about changing perceptions and seeing things so that this is not necessarily one of deficit. And that shift of wording changes perceptions completely, so that their confidence can be changed completely. And that will change the way that our children and teens, as they become adults, that will change how they show up in the world. And this is the foundation of everything else, everything that I cover in my coaching sessions, everything that I cover in my work with parents. All of this links then to then tapping into the correct support strategies for your child, whether it's around executive function or emotional regulation. All of that becomes much easier when there is a sense of confidence and understanding in who they are. So let's talk about our task for today. So each day there's going to be a little talk like this for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll give you some information, and then I'm going to give you a task to do that's going to encourage you to take this information and turn it into action. So you've actually got two options for today, because it will depend on where you are in your journey into neurodivergence. One is focused on labels, and if this issue of struggling to label your child, or you've got plenty of family members who don't really want to talk about the neurodivergence issue, then you might want to do the task on labels. But then if you're well into this journey and you're well reconciled with the whole labels issue, you might want to do the language task. So you've got a choice of those two. Now, for labels, if you want to do the labels task, I'd like you to write a short explanation of why it is okay and helpful to give your neurodivergent child this label, this understanding. And the idea behind this is that it will kind of tool you up. It will give you the confidence in explaining to others why you are not afraid of this neurodivergent label. In fact, why you are embracing it. And remember those three words: reality, it's not going to change. Shame is not something that you are going to have tolerated for your child. You are not going to perpetuate shame for your child. And opportunity. You need to open the opportunity to understand your child's brain so that you can work with it, not against it. So those are the three words that I always anchor onto, but you need to work out kind of a language, a script that works for you. So task A, option 1, is on labels. The alternative task, if you feel quite happy with labels, is to think about language. So I'd like you to list 3 negative words that are often associated with your teen or child. And think of 3 more empowering interpretations of each. And just like we gave with the distracted example, look behind that presentation of distractedness or awkwardness or whatever it might be, and disorganization, and think about what's going on behind that, whether it's just processing everything, and try to think of more positive, empowering alternatives or corrections to those negative words. Now, this can feel contrived to begin with, because you think, okay, well, if my child is just appearing disorganized to the typical person, I don't want to be using sort of contrived language. This does take time and intention to change mindsets and change perceptions here. And it can feel a little contrived to begin with, but we will only make inroads here if we try. And this is why it would be great if you can upload or put in your responses to these tasks into the thread for day 1. And I will come in and share my ideas about how you could turn a word around, like being disorganized. And we can share each other's ideas and learn from each other on how to make these language shifts. Okay, so please do share your responses to these tasks on the thread for day 1. So it should already be up there in our Navigating Neurodivergence page. There'll be a day 1 thread where you can ask me questions about anything relating to today's talk. You can contribute your own thoughts to those tasks on labels or language. You can read other people's thoughts. You can comment on those thoughts to help refine your own. And we'll have a little bit of a chat about it within the group. Okay, thank you for sharing the last 25 minutes with me. I hope that has been useful in chatting through labels and language, and I will look forward to seeing your contributions in the group. I will be in there throughout the day. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you contribute. Just as a reminder to those of you who didn't quite make it to the welcome party last night, I did say that on Thursday we're going to have prizes for people who manage to show their commitment to the task each day. So for people who do contribute their thoughts on the task for each day in each thread, you will be in with a chance of winning various prizes that are going to be up for grabs on Thursday, including some of the specialist training modules I have on executive function, emotional regulation, and that sort of thing. So hopefully that will motivate you to share, because I know it does take a certain amount of bravery to put yourself out there, particularly when we're talking about, tricky issues around neurodivergence. Right, lovely to spend this morning with you, and I will look forward to seeing what goes on in the group and seeing you all at 10 o'clock for tomorrow for day 2 of our journey together. Enjoy the rest of your day.